show. I am Turyatunga Rebecca Juna, and today we review the report by the Equal Opportunities Commission. We thank the Equal Opportunities Commission for giving us this report. We understand that it's their mandate. However, we also know that when people are doing the work and they're not thanked, they get demotivated. We also know that there is no service delivery without the technocrats, but there's also no job for the technocrat without the citizens. It's upon this background that we review what they gave us in regards to women political participation and equal opportunities for them. Today, I'm joined by a team of great women, and I have with me Elizabeth Ampairwe from the Forum for Women in Democracy. Welcome to the show, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Rebecca.
And for those that don't know the Forum for Women in Democracy, it is one of the organizations that resulted out of the Constituency Assembly by the women, has done tremendously good work, and it's over 20 years old. And the wonderful Omega, Aloyo from FIDA.
Thank you, Rebecca, for having us.
Welcome to the show once again. Omega is the person that, you gave us feedback. She talked about the Witchcraft Act on the show. And Prisca.
Thank you very much for having me.
Welcome back from Yali.
Thank you.
The team at Yali, for those that don't know Yali, it's a leadership training for young people to go and know how to take up transformative leadership. And our famous Sakisa Hellena from Dwona initiative. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
How have you been?
I've been okay.
Dwona is an organization that helps also young women, but also Helena is the person that told you in 2006 she was in P1. But we want to thank the Equal Opportunities for giving us this. And to you, Omega, with what is the legal background of the Equal Opportunities Commission?
Oh, okay. Yes. The legal background of the Equal Opportunities Commission. Well, if you look at the Constitution, the 1995 Constitution as amended, it provides for doing away with discrimination. That is in Article 1, Chapter 4. So you want to do away with discrimination in a country. But then remember, the state is the one that has the mandate, because the state is it has a duty to all of us for being in power, but then the state cannot do everything. So how does the state make sure that it's doing each and everything it's supposed to do? It sets up commissions and ministries, departments, agencies to make sure that the work it's supposed to do is actually being carried out. So if you move away from Article 21 and you look at articles such as 32 on affirmative action, recognizing that there is discrimination in the country, but then also seeing that there is need for affirmative action, that is where the Equal Opportunities Commission, it comes in. It comes to implement the role of the state, and there is actually an Equal Opportunities Act. If you read through that act, the Equal Opportunities Commission is supposed to monitor, evaluate. It's it can be a watchdog, it can have advisory powers, it can be reported to anything that concerns equal opportunities in the country. And most people think that the Equal Opportunities Commission governs only government agencies. No, it governs NGOs, it governs companies. So it is because the duties of the state, it assumes that position in a statutory manner. So this report is very timely. As I was reading through it, I was very happy. I think Honorable Safi and the rest of the members did a very wonderful job.
Yes. Thank you so much, Omega. And Prisca, I'll come to you. We have seen that the Equal Opportunities Commission and the State of Equal Opportunities in Political Participation, they mentioned that the women constitute 45.8% of the cabinet. Would you want to see maybe 60 or 50-50?
I think when we got on grounds of our imbalance, like participation imbalance, I don't want to see women go to 70. In as much as it would mean so much to the women's movement, I think 50-50 would be a great chance for us. It would be a great shot. So the fact that there's still and when you go back to the participation that is being highlighted in the Equal Opportunities Commission report, it highlights the fact that even if it's 45 point something percent, there is still when it comes to decision making, there's still a gap. There's a very huge gap, and you see, in as much as we have parliament, let's recognize that maybe regional leadership or or what they called like district leadership plays a very key role in decision making, because it is from there that most of the things that directly affect people in that particular community or district the decision arose from the district level. So if the participation of women is not highlighted in those areas, there's still a very huge gap. So for me, I think let's go back to the district level and say, can we have decision making at the district level 50-50% for both genders? For me, that would be a very good shot for the women's movement.
Okay.
Yeah.
Helena, they've released and said, because you answered the 2006, they've answered you. Government is now responding to you. That the numbers were a bit, they've increased. Have you felt the impact of women being in leadership as a young woman, especially from the youth female members of parliament?
I think the impact is there. We still recognize that the impact is there, but it is minimal. Why? Because still these young women are struggling with discrimination. They're struggling with cultural norms. They are also struggling with how to balance their political life, how to also balance their, leadership life, and also how to balance their family life. Because we see that even when women are given these opportunities, especially the youth, there are some factors that really hinder them to exclusively create impact. So yeah, the impact is there, but it is minimum. But I just think that we should create more of a fair ground for the young women. And also, I like with the youth, I have seen that many of them have the ability to create the impact, to go into these spaces and get what is supposed to be done. But also the fact of resources affects them so much, and the security part of it. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Helena. And to you, Elizabeth Ampairwe. The report states that there's been little progress for directly contested seats. Why do we see that there is little progress and for women to to take up these seats? Yeah.
Thank you, Rebecca. The first thing I would say is that people have viewed, there's this huge public perception that affirmative action is the ultimate rather than the minimum.
Okay.
So people believe that, women shouldn't go beyond the affirmative seats. And oftentimes in the communities, when you ask women to vie for direct seats, they will tell you, oh no, those are seats for men.
Yeah.
And that is a widely shared opinion in the communities where we work. And then, of course, the other big reason is around the other public perception that, the public space is a domain for men. So women are not supposed to actually be in the public space, making decisions, debating all these things that affect the day-to-day lives, things like plans and budgets. Yeah. So you will find that a few women that transcend that level, the domestic arena, are then viewed by the public as, rebels, people who have defied the social norms that have been put in place to actually restrict women's leadership. Then the other issue is around the context that Helena has talked about, the commercialization of politics, the militarization of electoral processes, the violence against women in elections that we see, manifesting in most of these electoral processes. At FOWODE, we did a study that we called Violence Against Women in Elections, that, pointed to the physical, the psychological, and even the financial violence that was being meted upon women that were actually vying for leadership. So you find that the context itself is very constricting, and then related to the issue is the participation of young women and the youth. Yeah. Because currently we said that as a country we are 78% youthful, but you look at the multiple interlocking, forms of discrimination that actually lock out the youth from participating in these electoral processes. And then there's no way you can ever surpass the affirmative seats if we don't have more youth participating, but also more women going beyond the quotas that have been put in place.
Okay, thank you so much. And you bring up the issue of perception and how people perceive women when they take up those spaces. I do believe it was Omega that put up a fight on this show. And thank you. And feedback is coming in. Thank you for fighting for the women and the echoes you've made. That being said, how then can we, what recommendations can be adopted by citizens and also government to show that we have mindset change around ensuring that women can even take up direct seats?
What recommendations?
Yes.
Personally, I think the recommendations themselves are in the report because, like we said, what the Equal Opportunities Commission did with this report, like it has always done with previous reports, it studied different sectors of the country. For example, it studied human capital development, which is how do you empower the population so that their work has economic value.
Yeah.
So if you go into the nitty-gritties of the report, it's so interesting.
Yeah.
It's a whole 386 pages, but for example, they'll give you statistics in the education field. They will say that our national total index is 15%, right?
Yes.
But how many people are hitting that? Then they would give you a statistic that says in Wakiso, people, about 476,000 students, boys, were in Division 1 and 19 were in Division 1 in another district. I think that was Amolata. In Wakiso, the female comparison was 4,000 something girls. In Amolata, of those 19, it was 1. It was actually 0. The 19 were all boys. So the recommendations themselves come from the report of the Equal Opportunities Commission, because they're trying to show that even in education and bringing up things like UPE, USC, enrollment does not equal to what? To success. There are regional imbalances. What is causing these regional imbalances? I remember in the report it was saying Western region and Buganda were the highest performing. Northern and Eastern Bukedi, they were not performing. And this, for me, these statistics are very important because they put a face to the narrative. You could have a narrative that is just flowing, but if someone tells you that 4,700 girls got Division 1 in Wakiso, and in Amolata 19 people got Division 1, and they were all boys, it just paints like a picture. It sorry, I'm just going to go through a few main elements of the report. There was the loan scheme, the university loan scheme. I think you know the loan scheme, right?
Yeah.
You will be shocked that in the loan scheme, only about 12.5% were from Northern Uganda beneficiaries, right? You'll find that 244 beneficiaries since the loan scheme started have come from Karamoja. Now, with all the problems that we know Karamoja has, only 244 people have gotten admission into tertiary what? Education. You'll find that only one person, ever since the loan scheme started, from Amudat, only one person has benefited. And you'll find that, okay, there is a general statistic of 68% men, 31% women have benefited. But when you put such figures, it shows you that the Equal Opportunities Commission will bring out this report, because when you document things, you make sure that they last forever. There is a benchmark to check from. If someone is saying that there is no issue in Karamoja, can someone pinpoint to this commission report and say, but only 244 people have benefited from a national loan scheme? In health, countries of the African Union had made a decision to, it was called the Abuja target. 15% of their budgets were supposed to go towards what? Health. In Uganda, it's 7.9%. You see those disparities, and you think you're not going to have what? Challenges. In Bukede district, a place that has over 7 districts, there is no national referral hospital. Then you find there are so many issues in the country in as far as equal opportunities are concerned. And as I state them and as I point out the statistic, it creates the picture. And I remember when this report came out, there was a lot of public murmuring about it. But I realized when you read the report, you actually see why people are getting a bit uneasy, because resources that are supposed to be nationwide, actually not nationwide. The most recent was the Daily Monitor article, their front page, where they put the composition of government CEOs by the region. Do you see? And they're saying, okay, this particular region has more people, this one does not. But then when you read the report, it creates the links. Because if someone is going to be a government CEO, you have to look at the education system in their area. Are people being empowered? Do people have the access? Just generally so many, I don't want to use the word horrible, but so many red flags. They looked at national planning and budget appropriation, and they were saying that it is not enough to say that our GDP has grown by 4.6%. Look at how many government ministries, departments, and agencies qualified for the gender and equity, that certificate.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, one of the funniest things in this report is that the MDAs that were not recommended to get a gender and equity compliance certificate are the most shocking. Look at the Uganda Land Commission, Microfinance Regulatory Authority, National Council of Higher Education. These are the things that are at the center of the livelihood of women. Access to land, access to education, access to microfinance. So there are those tiny, I said tiny in quotes because they're extremely huge. On paper, they're tiny, but the commission has put a face to the current situation in the country. In education, in political participation, they even go as deep as to say how are government loans spread out, which regions are benefiting the most. That UNA has received 2.8 billion within financial year, say 2012 to 2013. Of this money, which regions are getting the chunk of it? How does that? It was so in depth, and the recommendations are never far from the problem. Because if you say one person has benefited, say from Amudat, what is the recommendation? To increase participation. You see, what's the recommendation of referral hospital districts not having referral hospitals? The recommendation is go back and hit your Abuja target, which is 15%. So, and I remember when I read the Daily Monitor article, it was talking about the CEOs, the issue of the CEOs, and how, say, the West and Central are taking up the huge chunk of it. And you'll be shocked that a national newspaper, and of course the commission itself, was saying, just create a quota to ensure what? Participation of everyone. It is as simple as that. If it is a ministry, department, and agency, you may not have the reach to go into company politics as a commission, or you may, that is a whole other discussion. But where you can start from is as the government of Uganda. Can you create a quota so that in fields such as education, human capital development, health, political participation, there is some sort of equal opportunity? And we are moving towards Vision 2040, right?
Okay.
We're talking about industrialization of the country. We are talking about inclusive growth.
But Aloyo, isn't the Equal Opportunities tasked not to give out that certificate to MDAs if they're not performing?
In the report, it specifically says that these were the ones that were not recommended. So if you're not recommended, it's just an insinuation that you haven't hit particular targets. And I remember they were talking about the regional development and manufacturing sectors. The manufacturing sector, they actually had to come back on the round table and have discussions with that particular cohort and say, before you get the certificate or before you get recommended, let's see how we solve this gender issue. And personally, I feel that was very strategic because you're going towards Vision 2040. Industrialization is the theme, inclusive growth. Manufacturing is literally in line with industrialization. So as we go towards Vision 2040, I repeat it again, we are now in our 13th year. The Equal Opportunity Commission is putting out a report. We are literally almost halfway. If these are the challenges that we are still having as a country, halfway towards a national target, then there is a challenge. It means we have to go back to the drawing board. And the Equal Opportunities Commission is the government itself. Because a delegated official has the power. So it's literally the government saying we have to go back to the drawing board and have discussions within ourselves to see that the situation improves. They spoke about women in employment, domestic care work, about how women constitute 50.9% of the population and over 83% of them are in domestic care work. And this is something, maybe you can enlighten me more, but what is the state of legislating that particular field of work? So in essence, what are you doing? You're only regulating a workforce that involves a certain gender and the workforce in which a certain informal group of people are captured in. All that money, all that taxation, all that safe space of work that Article 40 of the Constitution is talking about, you're not creating a conducive environment for people in that nature of work to what? To work. So for me, as you ask the question of the recommendations, the devil is in the details. The details themselves have the recommendation. You read through and then you say, okay, just do this. Just do this. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Omega. I'll come to you, Prisca. With that heavy discussion that she has given us, and that's the heavy discussion Equal Opportunities Commission has given us. What do we as citizens now? Because are we proposing solutions to a shaky system? How do we then work together? Government, remember we've said there is no service provision without the technocrat, and there is no job for the technocrat without the citizens. How do we then sit down with our government, and because these are our brothers and sisters that are there,
they are
and we are the citizens.
Yeah.
So to address some of these things and also the recommendations that they've given.
Yeah. So she has given us a very extensive deliberation here, and for me it's things that have actually been highlighted by the government itself, right? How do we then like for me, and you see the fact that people and government, because some of these things have been like our daily conversations, right? And I think maybe some of the conversations have even guided on what has come through. Now, this is the fact that it's now attached by numbers, by the impact that some of the gaps that we have ignored for so long are now transcending to now figures of this is it for this region, this is it for women, this is it for men, this is it generally for the country. Going back now to the drawing board of we have been able to analyze, we have been able to now see that some of the things that we do or the work that we do as citizens or as government is directly impacting on how we now like move past the fact that there's a gap that needs to be filled. For me it's can we try to give priority to some of because when you see the report is giving us by the time you read it, every time you finish maybe a chapter, or maybe because it has segmented into different, there's women, political participation, there is health, there is the education sector, a couple of sectors that have been segmented into different. Every time I was reading, I finish a chapter and you're intrigued by the findings. The findings intrigue you to think that only if we are able to approach this problem in this perspective, we'll be able to get these results. If government and citizens, and for me, by the way, I think, I don't want to say that as citizens, we have not much to do towards ensuring there is equal participation or equal access to different, but I think entirely it's a burden that is placed on the shoulders of government, on the shoulders of our decision makers. How are we as citizens are taking a deliberate state of action to ensure that the people that we are giving the mandate to like put in place certain systems, or taking a very big, because they hold, it's like saying that in the next 1 hour or in the next, like our discussion now, it's how you're going to give us questions. It's going to help us be able to assess how we answer. It's like we are putting we are putting our 1 hour in your shoulders to what? To be like to kwado winza, to honestly to you have the mandate to shape how we are going to feel, or how we are going to respond. So we are giving a group of very few people, by the way, to shape how we are going to be taxed, how our work is going to to be able to thrive, how our businesses are growing, how the region is able to get certain access to certain funding,
but
national
we have
resources
members
and
of
all
parliament?
that.
Because we get to see that we have women members of parliament.
Yeah, we do.
I think each district is represented in parliament.
I want
Our members of parliament doing for us justice. This is the time Ministry of Gender was giving out items.
Yeah.
There are members of parliament that sent representatives, and there are members of parliament that were not there.
There's a day we talked about this topic of we have women representatives in parliament, every district, by the way. And if we go back and check, and I want to quote, like, it's not my words. If we go back and check the Equal Opportunities Commission report around women political participation,
Yes.
how it highlights the fact that decision making, it's not centered around that. It's, and I don't want to call it a stunt, but it's a way that government said, okay, affirmative action, let's give women the seat of one. But when we go back to the idea of, when we go back to the fact of how decisions are made moving forward, it's a discussion that may not be directly said on TV live, but behind doors, guys, decisions are being made by a certain hierarchy. I don't know how to call it, but it's something that we have not yet explored very well. But to be honest, decisions are being made by very different people. Okay. And women are very few. If the seats are 7, there is 1 woman. And that is very bad for us. But also for the what? Generally for the country. Because we are many, that's a fact. And when you go back to, she has been giving us the figures that are already in the report. When you go back and we say out of 19 performers, we have none of them is a female. What does it speak to that particular district? That means that in the next 10 years, we will not have a woman that will run against the 19 men if it's running for a political position. I don't know whether you get me. And if you're looking at Agenda 2040, if 10 years from now, because let's say those 19 will be the ones that will be dominating the different structures in that district, that means that we'll not have any female. Do we see now that most of the things that are already are affecting women directly will speak to even our state in the next 10 years or 5 or...
Okay.
So it's a very big problem, and I think it goes back to us as citizens. What decisions are we taking intentionally to put the right person to make the right decision for the benefit of all of us?
Okay, you raise a very important issue of citizens' participation, and that's why we are here, because the Equal Opportunity Government has given us its report and said here is where we are. Now, you citizens, you have your role. And I will come back to Helena and say, how therefore do we do our advocacy and lobbying? Because we believe that globally, governments, citizens have to do advocacy and lobbying. Because of the protocol and all those things that are involved. How then, after this report, do we, especially for young women, do our advocacy and lobbying and say we need more numbers, and numbers that translate to impact? At both the local government level and the national level, because there are things that are at local government level that those women will handle, and also there are things that are at national level that the women will handle. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Before going back to my question, I just want to say that if we, the young women, would want to lobby or carry out advocacy, there is first one factor that the government and the citizens should give to the young women, and that is giving them a platform. And after giving them a platform, giving them the protection and security. Because you see, we may say we want them to come up and speak about these things, and also have to say something about the Equal Opportunity report, but then how are they being protected and how are they being guided through it? But also, I just want to tell you that we are not, we don't have the capacity yet to carry out the advocacy and lobbying. We as the young women, there are few women that have the capacity, but not all the women have the capacity, and that's why even when we say we want gender parity in places of leadership, in places of CEO, in various places, we have to recognize that even amongst us women, there is disparity. Why? Because the local woman has a way she's affected, and there's the urban woman who is affected in some way. So what does this bring up to us while we are carrying out this advocacy? We have to recognize that we should create different mechanisms that suit the two types of the women, the local woman and the urban woman. And also give the local woman the capacity, because I know the urban lady, they can have the resources to do something impactful, but then the rural woman is, she's tied on a ring of very many things. First, patriarchy. Second, she lacks the knowledge on how to do this, on how to advocate, on how to create impact. Yeah. And also the second one, the other thing is she lacks the resources on how to go to the field and carry out these various things she would want to create impact in. So it's just high time that we, as the young women and the women's movement, we recognize that there is disparity between the women themselves, but also how can we ably give capacity to these two types of women. And also how can this also goes back to also the government. How can the government give capacity to the women? And why am I saying this? I want to point out that when we speak about the education system, we see that many rural girls do not have the capacity to attend school due to what? Menstrual injustices that happen to them. They cannot go to school because they are going through their menses. But you see, recently the government said they would put a tax on that, on the menstrual
But Helena,
materials.
also, if we keep saying that, there is this, but we get to see that we had women in the women's movement that broke barriers to get into these spaces, so that we break these barriers for other women to get into it. Are we going back to these conversations of what the Miriam Matembes fought?
Can I say something?
Can I say?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yes, thank you, Becky, Helena, and all the panelists. I just want to say that the context keeps evolving.
Yeah.
So when we look at the times of the Miriam Matembes and the current times, I think if you look at for example, the government context, it was more accommodative, and there was a new government that was seeking acceptance from the public. So they seem to advance issues of women's participation, gender equality, but we are now in a context where government has overstayed. Citizens are beginning to all feel like, no, we've had enough of the 40-year rule. And you see this on social media, you see it in all the media houses, all the voices that you hear, those that do not fear to say what they ought to say. So I think it is kind of unfair to compare the Miriam Matembe times and the current times. As we speak now, there's a lot of self-censorship. Just like we talked about women's participation, do we feel them? Do we hear them? I think for me, as we put the women leaders on the spot, we need to remain alive to the context. The context is highly militarized. Those of you that have relatives that are in opposition, you can attest to this. Some people have disappeared for over 2 years. Nobody can account for them. Others have been discovered actually dead. So how many Ugandans are willing to pay the ultimate price? And if we talk about women, we are mothers, we have children out there, we have so much to look out for. So how many are willing to go that extra mile to risk their lives to hold government accountable? Having said that, I think the solution is in citizen engagement and mobilization, because we are stronger together as a citizenry, and you cannot be singled out once you organize yourselves as citizens and come up with key actions. But for citizens to be mobilized, they need the information. So one of the things is that this information, these discussions that are happening at national level need to trickle down to the ordinary citizens living in the rural areas of this country. Because when we talk about disparities, for example, in health financing, you'll find that the citizens, more or less women and girls, are more dependent on public services. They're the ones you'll find at health center force lining up from morning to evening for just a painkiller. While maybe the women in urban centers, because of their economic viability, you'll find that they can move to a pharmacy and, you know, afford themselves this painkiller rather than line up the entire day at a health facility. So we need to raise a citizenry with agency that understands these issues, that is able to hold government accountable together, collectively, such that they cannot be singled out as an individual.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say something as well. I think I was trying to listen to Hellena, and when we talk about the fact that there is like gender disparity, and for me, why it would make much more sense to add on what she said, that there is and when we say capacity building, it's not just bringing women in one room one day and speak to them and say, you know, when you are a woman leader, your representation should be to this effect or this effect or that, and then that is it. I think the capacity building we are talking about is to guide through. You see, because of all these like different issues that are aroused in our communities, you find that your women leaders are put in like a corner to then just run around with decisions. Like that's why you find women are disappearing from like the decision making scene. They're not there because there's a certain kind of compromise that has been made to that effect. So for me, if right now we are having 188 women MPs, and only of those 14 are in the direct like ticket of like MPs, not women MPs. If these ones, if there is enough capacity being built, if there is behind like the face of like national leadership, how are we empowering them to stand, to hold on to their values? Because there's a lot of compromise that is made in between. And this compromise is to the effect of the fact that she's a woman, she probably has a family or children to take care of, and maybe there are certain guns that, like things that are being held towards her to show her that if you do not do something of this nature, there's something, you know. And because they're being put in a hole or in a corner, they are going to, at the end of the day, make decisions that maybe might involve protecting their own well-being or their families.
Okay,
so for me, it's how we are empowering them. And yeah.
Thank you so much. And I will come back to you, Liz. We see that 97% of the district chairpersons are men. Yeah? And you know where mothers are. They also, if you've entered offices where women are the leaders, they also tend to do that unpaid care work of, now don't do this, don't talk like this, don't sit like that. You get it, eh? But now we are having offices where it is at the local ground and women are very few. And this is the Equal Opportunities Commission telling us that, hey, at the grassroots, women are very few. As an organization, because I know that FOWODE has done a lot of work around village budget clubs, community advisors, model men, ending gender-based violence. How then do you advise us as citizens to maybe take on maybe the FOWODE model of ensuring that we have more women as district chairpersons?
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Becky. I want to really agree with you that having more women as district chairpersons is really a game changer, because most of the planning and budgeting actually happens at district level if we are to go into the decentralization kind of discussion. And the barriers to women's participation or leadership at that level are not any different from the barriers that we discussed earlier on. It gets back to the mindset, to the perceptions of the citizens. Therefore, my recommendations are categorized into three. The first one are policy recommendations. We have the parish development model currently being profiled as Uganda's vehicle for social transformation. But when you look at the money that government actually allocates to mindset change, it's just $1 billion shillings for the entire country.
Yes.
If you're to do the calculations, it may come down to about 40,000 shillings per local government for them to do mindset programs. And mindset change programs are the ones dealing with the norms, the beliefs, the attitudes, the practices, aimed at, shifting the narrative around women's leadership. So we need to see more investment to put our money where our mouth is. If we feel we need more women there, then let us invest in those spaces. Then the other issue is around electoral financing that we talked about. District chairpersons are actually elected into these offices by the citizens. So it's a highly contested position at district level. And given the fact that these are like the heads, the political heads of the district, they wield a lot of power, and many people want to have that power. So we need to see regulation of the electoral financing itself. If we could have like an electoral expenses act put in place to just regulate the amount of money that people actually inject into elections, because we know that women don't have collateral, their access to finances is really restricted, and therefore if we are to have money being unregulated into circulation during elections, you can be sure that you're not going to see very many women vying for those positions. And then the other issue is around recognizing violence against women and girls during elections as part of the gender-based violence laws that we have in place. So we have many laws that tend to address gender-based violence, but none on addressing violence against women in elections. And like I said in the beginning, FOWODE has a fully blown study on violence against women in elections, and it is high time that we looked at some of these recommendations, some of these findings, and as a country tried to, put in place a conducive environment that encourages more women to participate in elections. Then lastly is about engaging men. As we talk about shaping narratives and these norms, we know that we live in a highly patriarchal society where men still wield most of the power. They determine decisions, especially at household level. So we need to scale up all these initiatives aimed at engaging men for social transformation, for us to realize the value add of having women as leaders, especially in ensuring gender-responsive services being delivered to the populace. And then the citizen model that you talked about, the Village Budget Club, is where we actually engage citizens to monitor government service delivery points. After they have monitored, they engage their communities in dialogues to share the findings that they have found. And then they interface with the duty bearers. So if it's a health issue, you'll have like the district health officer, the district health inspector, and all other people that are mandated to make sure that there is gender responsive service delivery at a given unit. And then together, during that interface, the duty bearers actually make commitments that they are going to address the, the identified gaps. And then we support the citizens to follow through those commitments by participating in budget conferences that happen at sub-county level and at district level. So through that process, citizens do not only have the voice and agency, but they get to understand the budgeting process. They get to understand why is it that, our maternity unit is underfunded, or we don't have a placenta disposal pit. Things like that that continue to, fuel things like maternal mortality, things that affect women and girls disproportionately. So it is important that citizens are involved, they are educated, they are aware, but most importantly, these platforms are created for them to be heard.
Okay, thank you so much. You've mentioned about creating platforms, and this platform has been able to give us as women, and I want to appreciate the Right Honorable Nabanja. I don't know if you remember the market women that we hosted here. She called them, but also her team taught them how to write the letters and observe protocol. You don't go to the Prime Minister before you go to your mayor. Some of those things, we need to appreciate them and the people that are doing that, but also want to appreciate Ministry of Gender, the women that were here and talked about creative industry. They've been able, I think, to get them funding, I think, from EU. So we appreciate that the platform has been able to, shape the narrative, but also change the lives. We appreciate CivSource for giving the particular woman, Zawede, she was here, an award with the MTN CEO and the other lady, I think, got on a plane. And they are very happy, market women, and there were vendors. And also us as the platforms, what are we giving out? And I'll come back to you, Omega. As the platform she has said that should be created, are we just facilitating debate without impact?
Facilitating debate without impact. This, I'm a big fan of the report. I think you can tell already.
Yes.
But the Equal Opportunities Commission report is what you get when you have a woman like Honorable Sakisa Hellena heading an Equal Opportunities Commission.
Yes.
Do you see?
Yes.
She's a woman with disabilities, first of all.
Yes.
She's a woman. If it is being a minority, she's a minority, right? So imagine, say a gentleman was heading the Equal Opportunities report from an area of the country that has majority of CEOs, from, you understand the narrative. And I remember as FIDA Uganda, we held a national disability dialogue, and she was there, and that was the time affirmative action was such a hot topic. And people were saying affirmative action is no longer important. And I remember I can quote her, because I was literally standing just behind the journalist. And she said, if it wasn't for affirmative action, I would not be in the position that I'm in. So do you see how that quote later on plays into the Equal Opportunities Commission? I am glad and happy that it is shaking up the nation in the way it should be. Because this is how people need to be shaken. To wake up. All that, if we can cover things in beautiful debate and terminologies, but at the end of the day, while I was reading, it even goes to say that we use the qualitative and quantitative model. So even minus the figures, there were pictures of hospitals. I remember there was a picture of a classroom in Agago. And there were pictures by comparison. In this region, this is what a classroom looks like. In this region, this is what a classroom looks like. You can clearly see textbooks in this classroom and textbooks in other classrooms. So even, I believe the government was intentional to place her at the head of this of this commission. So it is not just debate. Participation is everything. Because when participation is inclusive, you have inclusive growth. Because you can't say you're growing if, ironically, the theme, one of the catchlines of Vision 2040 is leaving no one behind. You see, and you're in your 13th year, and you're having these issues, one person from Amudat benefiting from a national university scheme. I don't know, I don't want to quote myself, but I think it is Bukedi, one of those districts, has not benefited from a government loan towards infrastructure. And later on, as you read the report, it says where are most government CEOs and leaders from MDAs coming from these regions? And they answer themselves, it's because they have the opportunities, education, human capital development. I think today is the first time that I really invested myself to read about human capital development, because it says if you enhance the skills and the knowledge of people, they will have, their work will have economic value. So as you say that CEOs are coming from this region, is it because their work has economic value and other people's work does not have economic value, right? And if these people's work has economic value, what have been the causes that have made them have that economic value? Is it education? You go back to the loan scheme, you go back to the university scheme, you go back to the statistics on PLE, you go back to saying that you have UPE and USE, but is enrollment success? Because it is very easy to say, oh, we have this and this amount of students in UPE and USE schools, but it's just merely enrolling and being part of a UPE USE school success? Because then that is what will inform that little headline that cantankerized the country of the CEO question. It all goes back, it plays into each other. Growth must be inclusive. So it is not just debate. We are not just having debates. If participation in government programs can be inclusive, we will see a lot of change. And like I said, there were those MDAs that were not recommended, and one of them was what? Uganda Land Commission. Sadly, as a woman and as women, you know the issues that women face around land. The last time I came, I quoted the FOWODE report that was saying
shattering the glass ceiling.
Shattering the glass ceiling. Yes, I quoted shattering the glass ceiling, and I was saying access to resources. How do people get resources? Land. What is the law surrounding land? Our campaign as FIDA Uganda, sorry to go back, this is a national conversation, I know, but our campaign is around women, protecting the property rights of women in what? Cohabiting relationships. So is there a link between this particular MDA not being recommended for that certificate and issues such as land rights of women? Those are now the real conversations. If we're going to have debates, they should be to that tune of understanding that it is not what the equal opportunity says that should make the nation shaken. It is how the Equal Opportunities Commission is creating linkages between economic growth and equal opportunities for everyone. And it is sad because it's a recurring, in each page that you read, it is recurring. Oh, this region has this and these people. So you see the benefit is ascribed to certain regions, to certain people in literally every sector. And we know what is happening in Karamoja right now, right?
Okay. Right, thank you. And this question, I'll bounce it to any of you that wants to stay. We have most of the time we have hosted the AWI Academy, and for you, I think you know that AWI Academy. Most of these women, they trade in China with their, those little things that they do have to and from. But we see that the consulate of Guangzhou has not been recommended to be issued a certificate of compliance for the financial year 2024. Most of the women in downtown, if we are pushing this discussion to Kasita, they use, those Wanamagagawale things that they put on, they have their things that they get from China. But now our consulate in China, and I know Ambassador Juju is doing a lot of work, has not been recommended to be issued a certificate. Then how will it reach these women that are in Chukubo? And most of these women, remember, they are not into your English and things. Because now we want to empower women economically. But the people that are supposed to even inform them, or when they get a problem when they reach there, have not been recommended.
I saw that when I was going through. I focused particularly on these four because they were the ones that were national. I saw the consulates and the foreign missions. You see how sad the problem is.
And now it's
the problem is so sad because China is one of our biggest trade partners, right?
And we are trying to go to it after they've closed AGOA.
Yes, so they have closed. You have women participating in trade, right? So I how to phrase, right now, like she said, the political atmosphere is not so favorable. You would want to phrase things in a certain way, but my recommendation for that would be the Equal Opportunities Commission has said that this is not who is recommended. So as government, what is your action for MDAs that have not been recommended? Are they going to face a certain sanction? Is there going to be a change in the leadership and structure of those MDAs? When you look into what is the law surrounding disciplinary action, compliance with statutory provisions, because there is a system. If this MDA has not been recommended and another MDA is recommended, there are factors as to why this one is not getting that gender certificate. Is it corruption? Because I read regarding land steal that the RDCs were among the people that were frustrating the process. You see, you go to report a land case and then sadly a person in political power gets involved and that is the end of it. You see. So for all these consulates and all these MDAs that have not gotten this certificate, the Equal Opportunities Commission has its mandate, Section 14 of the Equal Opportunities Act. It has given you, it has said, we have monitored, we have evaluated, here it is. We can receive complaints, it is fine. It is now up to government because government has different statutory bodies. From the Equal Opportunities Commission, who is taking it up? As civil society, we can come up, we can do advocacy around it. We can come on shows and speak about it. But there has to be, for lack of a kinder word, penalty for this. Because it is sad. We saw what was happening in Dubai when women were made to breastfeed dogs around labor exchange. Remember the whole narrative and conversation around labor, transporting labor, and our sisters going to Qatar and and being sexually abused, and the amount of public outcry garnered and then the Ministry of Gender had to draw within itself, and then literally have to come back to the drawing table and say, okay, what happens?
Yeah,
What,
and investigate. Yes.
you remember that discussion and how things were so intense. I think that business was actually halted for a while, right?
Yes,
A couple of
companies,
businesses,
and it's the perfect example of what to do when people are not in compliance. You come back to the drawing board and say, first of all, I would like to see the license certificate of every company that says they're taking people abroad. Okay, what is in your license certificate? That same model of accountability should come to these. I'm smiling because
it falls under Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and we know that it's beyond just people, it's also diplomatic relations, and diplomatic relations sometimes get complicated, but we also understand that the women traders in Chukuvo, if we're saying that we are securing everybody's future, the consulate in Guangzhou should be empowered enough to go and even look, where are our women?
The consulate is empowered. And I say that, I know when I say that it will sound like, oh, but there are some issues, they need capacity building. By the time people are being composing members of a consulate, they have gone to school, they will not just wake up and, you understand?
Our assumption
is
that,
actually, that is, when I say the consulate is empowered, I speak from the perfect theoretical view. Because sincerely, if you're in the consulate, it means you went through a recruitment process, right? An appointment process. You do have the capacity it takes to represent people in a foreign nation. If there are any gaps, we have to ask ourselves, are there accountability gaps? Was the problem with appointment and recruitment? That is the same accountability model that I am speaking to. The same way the conversation on labor came about should be the same conversation and the same amount of public dismay towards people, towards actually MDAs and all these people that have not qualified for the certificate on gender equity. Because truly, what are you going to do? If you've not, how are you going to say that you're for gender equity if you've not gotten the basic minimum, which is the certificate? Because the certificate will say, okay, for these and these traders that are coming in, this and this, these are the provisions. What are the referral pathways? In case someone is assaulted, she has come to, you see, she has come to buy this and this. This is her referral pathway. As a consulate, this is what we do. Then what happens? This is how we realize with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. This is, and when we were talking about the Equal Opportunities Commission, we said this is inclusive growth. I think you can see how things are playing into each other now. Because you're a consulate, but there is the Ministry of what? Foreign Affairs. So as the consulate, how are you leveraging on that relationship with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, having gender norms and gender at the back of you, and then liaising with, and also it goes back to having people in positions of power that are qualified, that care about gender. I started this particular part of my segment by saying that this is what happens when you have Honorable Safia in power. So that particular statement should draw to other what? Areas. In the report, they say that people like the Lendu, what is that word people like? People say Bachope. There is, maybe just to give us more clarity, there is no tribe called the Bachope. It is Paluo. But people call it the Bachope. So there is, you understand what I mean? And ever since I was a young girl, I know this is drawing away from it. But when I read the report, even me myself, I was enlightened. When I was a young girl, I remember people would say, oh, Abo Bachope, you see. And it was this general term from everyone from the north, from West Nile, Lugbar, you see. But when I read the report for the first time, I realized that Abo Bachope is an ethnic minority.
Wow.
You see? It's an ethnic minority. And have you ever actually had someone come out and say, I'm a Muchope? Who around here has had? But there are people that are actually called the Bachope. You see? And we are laughing, but it is not a laughing matter because now you have to ask yourself, where are these people in positions of what?
And
of leadership.
How did we term them this way?
Yeah, and how do we, quote unquote, disrespectfully term people like that from a region? Because that is quite tribalistic even. You see? That general terminology just goes to show as a country, we haven't gone back into looking at our multilingual status and seeing these and these are the people from this area. And if we don't do that, we will always cluster, and that is where the mistakes will be what? made. So for me, it is accountability, and not accountability from CSO, not accountability from from government. You gave this commission the mandate to produce for you this report. It has given you the report. Is it a report that is going to be shelved in a file, or is there going to be some work on the recommendations?
Thank you so much. I know that the team is telling us it's time up. I just don't even know. Yes, and it will be your call to action and your last message, and we'll start from you.
Okay, thank you, Becky. I just wanted to rejoin the conversation on the tribal disparities in the country. I think we shouldn't look at the Equal Opportunities Report as an isolated aspect. It should be able to build onto other conversations that have been happening in this country. For example, there has been an outcry for a national dialogue, which is about telling the truth and reconciling as a nation. So I think it's high time we revived conversations on the national dialogue, because that will be that the thread that we need to weave the patriotism that we need as a country. And then I also wanted to speak to the issue of trade and China. I think we need to delve deeper into the report and find out the reasons, the actual issues therein, as to why they did not qualify for the Certificate of Gender and Equity. And then after you have dissected the report, it is important to call upon organizations that are focused on trade. We know them. Within the sector, we know EOC is there, IST is there. Let them, Siatini, call them to a discussion like this and come up with actionable, way forward, so that it's not just a discussion that is left hanging, but they can actually engage the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Gender, and all the other, concerned parties that need to get on board of this conversation. And then lastly is a call for all of us to embrace this report as citizens of this country without having to point a lot of fingers, because at the end of the day, this Uganda we are talking about is our country. Whenever I travel, I tell people I am homesick because I haven't been to a country as beautiful as Uganda is, with good weather, with good people, with good food, with people that you can depend on. So as we shape the narrative, as we shape the country, let us not lose track of the fact that we are all Ugandans, and these conversations should be aimed at enhancing what we already have as a beautiful nation. Thank you
so much, Liz. Omega.
Liz is quite a patriot. I am also a patriot. I am just.
And Liz is one when you.
I am just, but I am a patriot. I love this country a lot too. That one is nice. The people are lovely. I now look like that is patriotism.
Yes, because you love the country.
Yeah. You said?
Because you love the country.
Because I love the country, that is why I should start from.
Because we can do better.
My parting shots would be, like she said, there are conversations that are happening, but they're happening behind closed doors. And even to say some of these words, it's sad, things such as tribalism, because it is from participation that there will be inclusivity and growth. And I remember when I used to interface with tribalism in the beginning, I would say, oh, these and these particular leaders and these particular people from this area are bad. And I would draw back within myself and say, no, but I have friends from this region. But actually, you see, they're doing the same work as me. So I think it was around my university days, I was torn, because you're looking at injustice, and injustice seems to be perpetrated by this particular group of people. But then you draw back within your inner circles and you have that. So it is not so much as the person or the ethnic group that has an issue. It is to refine the system to make sure that everyone has an opportunity. You see, the conversation that we had on district chairpersons being women, Honorable Safia, Honorable Kadaga, even Honorable Nabanja being a woman. It's not tribalism in itself. It is any form of discrimination on any basis that has an issue. That is where the true problem is. Because the issue is the Equal Opportunities Report. It is there. So when we talk about participation, if you look at the loan scheme, go still to the issue of participating. Who is choosing these people? How are they being chosen? Is there something around the national quota to make sure that everyone has a chance? is the monitoring and evaluation being done as against to see participation? So my parting shots would be truly equal participation of Ugandans. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think my parting shots, first of all, I want Elizabeth told us to embrace the report, but also as we navigate the report, I want us to notice the fact that every aspect or every sector feeds into the other. So you find that the disparities that we have are all not as a result of one sector, but every sector feeds into the other. So if we have approaches, or let's recognize the fact that different actors or different stakeholders will be able to address something. So as a citizen, what is that one thing that you want to, if you're doing advocacy, if it's around maybe participation or it's around the health, or what is the information that you're putting forth to ensure that there is maybe impact that is being created at the end of the day, or approaches to that. So for me, is that as we do our work, let's recognize that every aspect feeds into the other, and for that we will see more impact in our communities.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Helena.
Yeah, for me, I just think we as citizens should interest ourselves in this equal opportunity report, and also call other actors on and see how ably or collectively we can come up with solutions, sustainable solutions, and not backfire each other. That's
Okay, thank you so much. It's been just the right conversation we need to have. And government listened to us and gave us a timely report. I remember we were here making noise. And I remember sometime the president said, are you talking from an informed point of view? Now they've given us documents to read and start talking from an informed point of view. Thank you so much, viewers, for watching us and for listening to us. And we thank the women's movement and the women before us. Your fight led to the fact that we can sit on TV and create platforms and speak, and government listens. We thank the leaders that ensure that there is the formation of the Equal Opportunities Commission and the Ministry of Gender, and ensured that women are into participation. But we also remind citizens that it's just not the role of the technocrats to do the work. You also have a role to play. Together, we can be able to develop our country through advocacy and lobbying, having each other's back, because our country, our responsibility. This is our home, and this is the Women's Show.